Hello. Lots of people. You guys are way up there. Very exciting. Well, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I'm going to start today by talking a little bit about my own college experience. I wrote a lot of papers in college, which is not my favorite thing to do. Which is funny because I'm a writer today. And you know, a lot of you have had to write papers, and a normal student writes a paper, it might look a little bit like that. So, you know, they might start out slow, but they get enough done in the first week that with some heavier days later on, everything gets done and, you know, things stay civil. And I would want to do that. That would always be my plan. But then I would kind of I would usually do this, actually. And then it would, you know, be an all-nighter, be really unpleasant, and that would happen every paper. And that's fine for a 5-page paper or a 7-page paper. But then came my 90-page senior thesis. Well, it's a 90 to 120-page senior thesis, which for me meant a 90-page senior thesis. And you're supposed to spend a year on that. You know, they give you a year just to plan it out. And I said, okay, you know, my normal thing is not an option here. Not for something like this. I need to be a normal adult. I'm going to plan out the year is going to go something like this. So we're going to have, you know, start light in the early months, and we're going to kick it up in, you know, middle months, and then we're going to kick it into high gear in the late months. It's going to look like a little staircase. Just going to go walk up the stairs, easy. Funny thing happened. I started, you know, first few months came and went, couldn't quite do stuff. And so we had an awesome new revised plan. And then when those middle months passed, instead of working on my paper, I kept innovating on the timeline. And we had 1 month, you know, 2 months turned into 1 month, which then turned into 2 weeks. And one day I woke up with 3 days until the deadline, and I still had not written a word. This is a completely true story, so I did the only thing I could. I wrote 90 pages over 72 hours, and I pulled not 1 but 2 straight all-nighters. Some of you have done an all-nighter. The second all-nighter is like a spiritual experience, different situation. Sprinted full speed, you know, got it in just at the deadline. And I think that's the end of everything. But a week later, I get a call. It's the school. And they say, is this Tim Urban? And I say, yes. And they say, we need to talk about your thesis. I say, okay. I say, it's actually the best one we've ever seen. Before you clap too much, that did not happen. It was a very, very bad thesis. I can never resist the opportunity to just have that moment when everyone here thinks, this guy's amazing. No, it was very, very bad. Today, you know, I'm a writer, blogger guy, and I've had experiences throughout my life with non-procrastinators telling me things like, okay, you know what you need to do just for the next paper? Just don't procrastinate and everything will be fine. And I say, thank you. This whole time it's been so simple. That's like going to a beached whale and saying, you know, you just need to go back in the ocean and all your problems will be solved. And the whale's like, thank you for that. Now I'll just head back to the ocean. So it's more complicated, right? And I was determined as a blogger to get to the bottom of what's going on. I wanted to write about procrastination, explain to the non-procrastinators of the world what goes on in the heads of procrastinators and why we are the way we are. And so I started by turning to science. And I said, you know, I had a hypothesis that the brains of procrastinators were different than the brains of other people. And I wanted to start there. So I went to an MRI lab that let me scan both my brain and the brain of a proven non-procrastinator so I could compare them. And I brought them here. I'm going to show you them. And I know many of you are not trained brain experts. I'm not either. So it can be hard to see, but just take a look carefully, and you'll see if you can notice a difference. So here's the non-procrastinator's brain. Okay? And here's my brain. So both brains have a rational decision maker in them. But the procrastinator's rational decision maker seems to have a pet. What does this mean for the procrastinator? Well, it means he spends a lot of time in this situation. Now, the rational decision maker will make the rational decision to do something productive. The monkey doesn't like that plan, so he says, actually, let's read the entire Wikipedia page of the Nancy Kerrigan-Tanya Harding scandal because I just remembered that happened. Then I want to go over to the fridge and I want to see what's in there in case something is different than 10 minutes ago. Then we're going to open YouTube. We're going to go on a YouTube spiral. It's going to start with videos of creatures of the deep sea, and it's going to go through a bunch of different iterations, and much later with us watching deep and intimate interviews with Justin Bieber's mom. And that's going to take us all the way to dinner. So actually, there's not room on the schedule for work today. I'm sorry. Now, what's going on here? The instant gratification monkey is the last guy you want behind the wheel in your brain. He thinks only about the present moment. He has no memory of the past. He has no knowledge of the future at all. And he only thinks about two things, easy and fun. Now, in the animal world, that works fine. If you're a dog and you spend your whole life doing nothing other than easy and fun things, you're a huge success. And to the monkey, we're just another animal species. He has to keep well-slept, well-fed, and propagating into the next generation. Which maybe in tribal times was okay. Maybe that's all you needed in tribal times. Not anymore. We're in an advanced civilization right now, and the monkey has no idea what that is. Which is why we have another guy in our brain, the rational decision maker. And he can do things that no other animal can do. He allows us to see the big picture and think long-term. We can visualize the future. We can make long-term plans. And he just wants to take all of that information into account, and he wants to have us do whatever makes sense to be doing right now. So sometimes it makes sense to be doing things that are easy and fun, like when you're having dinner, going to bed, when you're enjoying well-earned leisure time. That's why there's an overlap. Sometimes they agree. But other times it makes much more sense to be doing things that are harder and less pleasant for the sake of the big picture. And that's when we have a conflict. And for the procrastinator, that conflict tends to end a certain way every time, leaving him spending a lot of time in this orange zone, an easy and fun place that's entirely outside of the make sense circle. I call it the dark playground. Now, all of you procrastinators out there know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the dark playground. It's a place where leisure activities happen at times when leisure activities are not supposed to be happening. And the fun you have there isn't really fun at all because it's completely unearned and the air is filled with guilt and dread and self-hatred and anxiety and all those fun procrastinator feelings. And meanwhile, the rational decision maker just mopes, wondering how he let the human he's supposed to be in charge of end up here again. And so the question is, what do we do with the procrastinator? How does the procrastinator ever get himself over to this blue zone? A less pleasant place, but somewhere where really important life things happen. Well, it turns out the procrastinator has a guardian angel, someone who's always there for him in his darkest moments, someone called the panic monster. Now, the panic monster is dormant most of the time, but he suddenly wakes up anytime a deadline gets too close or there's danger of public embarrassment, a career disaster, or some other scary consequence. And importantly, he's the only thing that the monkey is terrified of. Now, speaking of public embarrassment, the panic monster and I had a little bit of a rendezvous recently when, I got invited to speak at CU a while back. What a cool opportunity. This is a large number of people. And I was very excited about that. And rational decision maker said, okay, this is exciting, but we have a lot of work to do. This is real. There's going to be a duke there. We can't upset the duke. We have to do a good job. And And so he says, look, we got to sit down and work on this right now. And the monkey said, totally. So let's start by opening Google Earth and let's zoom in on Puebla. And let's look at what it looks like. And then we're going to just move over to the Yucatan. And we're going to go and spend 3.5 hours trying to figure out exactly where the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs landed. So that's what we did that day. And things like this continued and continued. And the date's getting closer. Until about 2 days ago, when I said, I wonder what the venue looks like. And I Googled and I opened it up, and I see this thing, and guess who woke up? So the panic monster starts going apeshit. And a few seconds later, the whole system's in mayhem. Now the monkey, remember, he's terrified of the panic monster. Boom, he's up the tree. And finally, rational decision maker can take the wheel and I can work on this talk. And this is how it happens. These three characters, this is the procrastinator system. It's not pretty at all. But in the end, it usually works. And this is what I decided to write about on my blog just a few years ago. And when I did, I was amazed by the response. Thousands of emails came in, more than any other post I've written. From, all different kinds of people living in different parts of the world doing different kinds of things. There were nurses, and there were bankers, and there were painters, and there were electricians, and engineers, and lots of PhD students. And they're all saying the same thing. I have this problem too. But what struck me was the contrast between the light, silly tone of the post and the heaviness of these emails. These people were writing with intense frustration and even despair about what procrastination had done to their lives, about what this monkey had done to them. And, I thought, okay, but if the procrastinator system works, then what's going on? Why are these people in such a dark place? And I think to answer that question, we need to look at something called the Eisenhower Matrix. Now, the Eisenhower Matrix is a super simple old tool, okay? And it just divides everything you could be doing with your time into things that are urgent and things that are important. It ranks everything by how important and urgent it is, which basically makes everything you could do into one of these 4 quadrants. Things that are both important and urgent, okay? Things that are urgent but they're not important, like maybe writing emails, doing errands, a lot of other things we find ourselves sucked up with, our time sucked up doing. But they're not going to be on our gravestone one day. Things that are not important nor urgent, for lack of a better term, when you're dicking around. And then Quadrant Two, things that are important, but they're not urgent, okay? So for Eisenhower, this was very simple. He did, Eisenhower, general of World War II, U.S. president, not an instant gratification monkey taking over his wheel. He said, I do the 4 Ds, okay? So the things that are urgent and important, you do them right now. Things that are important, but they're not urgent, well, you make a plan to do them. Everything below the line, not a good use of Eisenhower's time. Okay, it's stuff that's urgent, but it's not important. Delegate it to someone else if you can, or get it done as quickly as you can. And then the other stuff, just delete it entirely. Don't waste your time. And that's great for Eisenhower, okay? But some of us have other things going on in our heads. So we have a different kind of matrix for procrastinators. And their 4 Ds start right here. And this is where the procrastinator lives, okay? If you want restaurant recommendations to Q4, you want to know where they live there. Just ask a procrastinator. But then something else happens. Sometimes the panic monster enters the equation. When things get urgent. So the panic monster runs in. That's when those are what you do over there. But how about Quadrant Two? How about the things that are important but they're not urgent? Well, the procrastinator has a plan for this, actually. You don't realize it, but he's got a trusty assistant. Future him. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Future Tim. Oh, man, Future Tim. I wish you guys could meet him. He is an awesome guy. He just, without any complaints, he just takes on whatever I give him. He's always peppy, he's always ready to go, and he just does whatever I ask. There's only one tiny issue with Future Tim, and that he doesn't exist. Every time I assign something to Future Tim, and then I get to that time when he's supposed to be there, he's just not there, just shitty Present Tim again. And Present Tim can't do anything. He's got this monkey here. So we have a problem here. And it has to do with Quadrant Two. And this is why I think we have to realize there's 2 kinds of procrastination. And this is the core of the confusion here. Okay? Everything I've talked about in the story so far, I've had deadlines, thesis, doing a talk, there's very clear deadlines on those things. And when there's deadlines, well, things get done eventually, even for the procrastinator, because the panic monster shows up. So the procrastination, the effects, they're contained to the short term, okay? Because eventually they enter the urgent side of things. But how about all these situations in life when there is no deadline? So if you want to do something entrepreneurial in the world, or something in the arts, for example, there's no deadlines on those things at first, because nothing's happening at first, not until you've gone out and done the hard work to get things going and get some momentum. Until then, it's all Q2 stuff. Okay, how about if, all the things outside of work that don't have deadlines that are really important, like exercising and taking care of your health, seeing your family and your friends enough, like working on your relationship, or maybe getting out of a relationship that isn't working. There's no deadlines on those things, and if the procrastinator's only mechanism of doing hard things is the panic monster, that's a problem, because in all these non-deadline situations, the panic monster doesn't show up. He has nothing to wake up for, so the effects of procrastination are not contained, they just extend outward forever. And it's this long-term kind of procrastination that's much less visible and much less talked about than the funnier, short-term, deadline-based kind. The kind that we say, 1 in 5 people is a chronic procrastinator. That's the short-term kind. But this other kind it's usually suffered quietly and privately behind the scenes, and it can be the source of a huge amount of long-term unhappiness and long-term regrets. And that's why all of those people who emailed me were in such a dark place. Not because they were cramming for some deadline, but because long-term procrastination had made them feel like a spectator in their own lives. The road to their dreams ran through Quadrant Two, somewhere they were not able to go. So when I thought about this, and I read all these different emails from all these different people, and I thought about people in my life, I kind of came to the conclusion that really there's no such thing as a non-procrastinator, which is why I think all of you, even the people up there, probably especially the people up there, are procrastinators. And that doesn't mean you're all a mess, like some of us, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily have an unhealthy relationship with deadlines. Some of you might hit your deadlines with no problem. But you have to remember that the monkey's at his sneakiest in the situations when there are no deadlines, which is why I want to show you one last thing. Okay, I call this a life calendar. That's one box for every week of a 90-year life. Take a long look at that. That's not that many boxes, especially since we've already used a bunch of those. And so I think we need to take a long look at that and think about what it is that we're procrastinating on, because everyone is procrastinating on something important in life. We need to stay aware of the instant gratification monkey, no matter where he's hiding in our lives. And that's a job for all of us. And with not that many boxes up there, it's a job that should probably start today. Maybe not today, but sometime soon. Thank you.
I don't want to procrastinate. And really, un aplauso para, I want to share with you. This year I went to 23 different conferences to watch different people and to invite them to Idea City. And since I met you, you were my favorite. Thank you again. Un aplauso para él. No, thank you very much.